So we can sit around if you'd like. I'll start here, we can snake back, and I sit over there, so that works well. Okay. Can helping hurt? Can providing aid actually be harmful in the end? Today, I'm going to talk about how we can provide appropriate aid, what good international aid looks like, and how we can do that wrong. I'm going to be specifically talking about the nation of Kenya, which is displayed on the hat there. According to the World Bank's website, Kenya is in the 20 fastest growing economies in the world, and according to them as well, in 50 years they will be in the top 20 most prominent GDP companies. So that's what makes this nation highly relevant for us to understand a little bit more about. I have the unique credibility to speak into this topic because I've spent significant time in the region. I worked with my mother in an orphanage, well, in 2 orphanages under the same organization there for a lot of my life. And my mother runs a nonprofit out there that tries to provide sustainable aid in the region. So today I'm going to talk about the problems facing youth in the developing nation of Kenya. Then I'm going to talk about my mother's approach to providing sustainable aid in the region, and then finally I'm going to talk about how each and every one of us can get involved. But first I'm going to talk about the problems facing the nation of Kenya. So first, when we think about aid, the first thing that we typically think about are kind of like fast, quick fixes, right? We think about Band-Aids that are being placed on an open wound. It's a little bit of a visual, but you get what I mean. We think about like food drops and what can we give for free. In Steve Colbert's book, When Helping Hurts, he discusses this fallacy, the fallacy of teaching a man to fish, of not thinking about the principle of teaching a man to fish when we're discussing international aid, right? So if you follow that, the analogy in that is obviously that you come in and you teach somebody to fish and then they'll be able to sustain themselves, right? What happens when the Western world actually knows how to fish, they overfish the region, and then even though they've taught this guy over here how to fish, when he comes to market, the Western world is handing out free fish. What does that guy do? This guy now has no ability to sell, right? He has no ability to go to market. He has no ability to compete basically with free. And you know, fishing is actually a legitimate industry that this is a problem in. Same with shoes and any kind of food. Basically, anyone on the continent of Africa or any areas that we're providing aid to have no ability to compete with free. They have no ability to begin their own markets, no ability to be entrepreneurs, to hire people that can then take that money and invest it back in the economy because you can't compete with free. The other issue is an overinflation of the job market. There are certain vocational and technical skills that are necessary in developing countries that have not really undergone an industrial revolution. Things like electrical work, woodworking, masonry. Societies like Kenya, for example, need a high amount of those, right? Let's say that they need 1,000. The reality, however, is that there's only 10, right? So there's an economic principle that states that even though there are only 10, there's not a lot of supply for that market. There's still that demand. So that supply actually fills that demand. So those 10 people can charge as much as 1,000 would. Does that make sense? They're able to overcharge for their services, which creates an economic bubble that is inevitably going to burst, which will cause huge detriment across the continent. So those are the problems. We just talked about the problems facing the nation. There's obviously many, many more, but I would like to now talk about the solutions. So getting to what I stated earlier, my mother runs an organization out of Kenya. It's called Learn for Life Kenya. It attempts to combat this problem of harmful aid and instead promote sustainable aid. What she's actually trying to do is build a vocational training school in the backyard of one of the orphanages that we're a part of, or that we help provide aid to. The first way that she is trying to create change in the region is by providing sustainable aid. A lot of times when people come in and provide aid, they do it in a way that they have to be there for. So she's trying to build that school. A way that a harmful aid would be implemented is if she needs to approve all the curriculum. She needs to take care of all the money transfers. She needs to do all this. But the idea is actually to work yourself out of a job. We would like to come in to a place that needs help, provide that help, and then walk away. Because, I mean, in all reality, There's no, at some point she's gonna pass. And she could try to pass on the torch to me, and I could try to run this organization, but at some point I'm gonna go away too. At some point, it is only helpful if it is run by local people. And in all reality, and in all frankness, there's no reason for me, a guy who grew up in Wisconsin, to try to speak into the lives of people in the middle of Kenya, right? They know how to run their stuff way better than we do. The best that we can do is help. The second way that she seeks to provide sustainable aid in the region is by empowering the youth in the region. There's a significant problem with patronage as well. For example, if you're an adult and you saw somebody as a child, you will never see them as anything but a child. Here in America, it's like, oh, once we've hit 18, we're adults. That's not the case, especially for people coming out of orphanages, right? There's a significant amount of patronage that is expected. So, if somebody saw you at 12 and now you're 30, they still don't give you the standing that you deserve, even if we've seen people with law degrees graduate and they're actually much more educated than their elders, but the elders still don't consider them viable to listen to. So what my mother does to combat this is she actually empowers those youth, right? She helps, since they're building that vocational training school there, they need help on the ground. So she will come and ask the youth to help find contractors, to help with blueprints, that kind of stuff. Basically, empowering them in the sense that they now have a say in their own future. So we just talked about her solution to the problems facing Middle Kenya. Now let's talk about how all of us can get involved. The first way, fairly easy, www.learnforlifekenya.com. It's my mother's website. You go to the main page, the big red button that says donate. It's the best way to get involved, in my and my mother's opinion. Basically, you're giving money to a good shepherd, right? Last speech, I spoke about how money is basically paper options. Basically, you're handing that option over to my mother, who will then obviously do very well with it. The second way that you can get involved is by, in fact, traveling to the region. My mother leads a trip every June to the region. She's always looking for college kids to come along. On an essay on the World Bank's website, they said that the best way to help provide sustainable aid is actually by breaking your own heart, by going to the place where you're trying to help those who are affected and help and learning their faces, learning their laughs and their tears, and joining in with that. It provides a certain amount of passion that is necessary. So we just spoke about ways that we can get involved in the region and in my mother's organization, which I obviously hope you all do. By investing in my mother's organization, you will be able to have a direct impact in one of the most developing nations in the world. First, I spoke about the problems affecting Middle Kenya today. Next, I spoke about my mother's solution to those problems and how she intends to provide sustainable aid. And finally, I spoke about how we can all get involved. When I think about the region, the words of Roger J. Singer's book comes to mind. He said in his book, "No one can do everything, but everyone can do something, and together we can change the world."